Again, this is your Daily Deep Dive with DBJ. I reserve Fridays for Eclipse Phase Fridays. So maybe instead I'm probably the muse to your cortical stack. Anyway, today we will talk 3D printing, blueprints, nanofabrication, cornucopias, and all of those little elements that make up part of a futurist and post-human technology in RPGs. Now, of course, I have to say that I am an armchair student of all things scientific and futurist, but my interest is in exploring those things we can use for role-playing games. So please forgive me if I somewhat muddle and glaze over the true scientific terminologies and scientific theories involved in those things going on today, but my intention is to delve into those things that we can use in role-playing games. So let's start out first with a couple of very short, very sweet and succinct definitions, and then let's move on, and so we can all be on the same page. So in transhumanist, post-human, futurist science fiction games, we have ourselves the ultimate in technology, and that is the 3D printer. Well, sometimes it's not called a 3D printer. If you take a look at Star Trek, it is you always see the captain say Earl Grey hot. Vroom, machine creates this cup of tea, Earl Grey hot. He pulls it out, he drinks it. Sweet, right? Well, not exactly. In transhuman culture, in specifically the game Eclipse Phase, also a GURPS Transhuman, and many other things. I believe Nova Praxis is another game. You may have these 3D printing machines, and of course, today they basically use a polymer, an extrusion device that puts out a material, it hardens up, we get to use it. It has to make little bitty pieces and whatnot, but we're talking about the future, in which case some of these devices that are made, or objects made in 3D printers, are made on the molecular level, chemical compound level, that kind of thing. But exactly how do we use it? And I'm going to say something that's not going to be very popular amongst those who are interested in the science, but makes perfect sense in the game. 3D printing, blueprints, cornucopias, nanofabrication, whatever you want to call it in your game, or maybe whatever you want to call it, habitat by habitat, station by station, is only as effective as the plot of your story. All right, so that seems kind of like a cop-out, but let me explain, because this is an excellent game master tool, right? All right, so what you have is in Eclipse Phase and with cortical stacks is that you'll have start a game out. And most games start out with in three forms, basically preparation, execution, and then conclusion. In the preparation phase, your players may or may not have access to a sleeve that they desire. Basically, their mind gets beamed to another location. They sleeve into another biological or synthetic or combination body, and then they have to equip themselves. Now, of course, if you're playing using the default in Eclipse Phase as a firewall agent, you can say, well, once you get into your sleeve, go to X, Y, or Z location to acquire your equipment and keep on going, which is perfectly fine. You can hand wave it as much as you want. Players wake up on Mars. There's an agent waiting for them. They get all their equipment that they want. Boom, you're done. But to make things more interesting, let's say, more complicated, add more obstacles, you can have them say, okay, you're in your sleeve, you have none of your equipment, no weapons, no armor, no communication devices. You need to get your equipment. Well, how do you get your equipment? First, you're going to need a blueprint. So what are known as cornucopias, or called cornucopias in Eclipse Phase, 3D printers, nanofabs, microfabs, whatever you want to call them. require blueprints. More mundane items probably have blueprints that are everywhere. They are probably carried in your however you download something in your internal brain next to your cortical stack. You can buy them off the street probably. You can make some reputation rolls to get some simple blueprints. And I'm talking things like clothing, a communication device, simple entertainment, simple tools are probably very easy to come by as far as blueprints are concerned. But more complex items, of course, you're going to go with your armor, your weapons, and the differences between dry and wet nanofabrication. So we're going to talk about a couple of things concerning blueprints. So for example, blueprints will have a rarity based on what you want. Player characters are going to want like espionage devices, cloaking devices. Hackers are going to want programs, skill chips, things you can download into your body, information on important personages. They can all be pieces of information, and part of those may require having a blueprint. And so adding in the part of the game, having some social interactions to acquire blueprints, then going to find the blueprints. Maybe those blueprints are hidden behind a bench in a park. Maybe they are, stuck behind the toilet in a restaurant. Those kind of things. You can always use spy and heist movies expanded out into a sci-fi setting so that your players can acquire those blueprints. Now, once they acquire the blueprints, they're going to have to go to find a machine and use the machine to build what they want. So you can break this into two functions. First of all, how long and how complicated is this device to make? Again, I'm going to muddle the scientific portion of this. How wet and how dry is your nanofabrication going to be in your world? And this can vary by habitat to habitat, neighborhood by neighborhood, location by location. What do I mean by wet and dry nanofabrication? Well, dry fabrication would be solid objects, right? So if someone wants to print a gun, a sword, a knife, it would be printed into one or more solid pieces that are then clicked together to be able to be used. And dry fabrication could make solid objects, powders, maybe a thick goo, but nothing much more, right? It makes Lego pieces. It makes clicks. It makes erector set type items that can be pieced together once it's taken out of the machine and assembled. Now, this might require in your adventure for them to go from nanofab machine to nanofab machine if they are not all linked on one network, so that wherever they arrive, those objects are not registered that someone is making a gun, right? Hey, what's up, dude? What's up, Prue? Just talking about ECLIPSE phase and nanofabbing, blueprints, cornucopias, those kind of things, and using them in ECLIPSE phase. So assembling a gun might require a number of operations to handle and all those kind of things, right? But that's dry nanofabrication. Wet nanofabrication allows a machine to create Earl Grey tea that's hot, explosives, things like that, medications, food items, though complex, unstable, based on temperature and creating acids and things like that, may not be possible in your world. Now, of course, you can limit this by saying, well, it's not possible where you're at, right? So it is possible to create a cup of Earl Grey hot. You're just not in the right location. Maybe you have to be in the private quarters of one of the immortal elites of the world, or maybe it's behind a military grade uh, location to print out something like C4 explosives or depleted uranium rounds or something like that. That, yes, it's possible, but chances are the minute you start printing it, there's going to be gunmen coming after you. All right. Hey, what's up, Drew? And so in this particular case, you have a situation where, as the game master, you can absolutely create a mission where the players are like, well, okay, we downloaded, we re-sleeved, we've got our bodies, now we need our guns, we need our equipment, we need our armor, or what have you. And it could be that in this particular mission, they don't need heavy weapons, they need polymer blades, maybe a spring-loaded gun with maybe to buy some a thing that fires needles, but they need drugs to put into the needles. Maybe they do need to get explosives, but they need to print out the chemicals or the compounds, powders or whatever have you, to make an explosive, but they need to print them out. And that can be an adventure by itself. So there's a 4-point security generalization that I use, which is trace, trip, track, and trace, whatever. So, okay, so the first thing is, if I got it right, is tracing. And tracing is a simple matter of when you go to use a blueprint into a nanofab machine, does the machine trace what you're doing, right? It may not set off an alarm, but it might go like, what is this person trying to create? Should I report it? Most things are going to be recorded anyway out of a blueprint machine, unless you're in the outer rim, in which case, they're anarchists. They don't care what you make, or they may have the freedom to not track what you are making. But most civilized habitats are going to want to know what you're making, and they're going to keep an example of that, right? So, so you're absolutely. What? What are you talking about? Don't retract that. So you're going to absolutely need to figure out a way to get black market items, like Prue kind of just said. And so there's where the adventure can really start, right? So you're going to have to figure out a way to get past the security. So you're going to, maybe a hacker can hack past security. Maybe someone has a contact to get black market items. Maybe you're able to assemble 90% of an object, but you need the firing pins. For energy weapons, you might exactly stick to your guns, Prue. Absolutely. So how are you going to get those guns? So making that part of the adventure before the adventure starts, that preparation phase, that heist thing, is really what you want to use these 3D printers for, these nanofabs for, the cornucopias for. And of course, if you're going to have a black market agent, that person has a good chance of turning your ass in. If you are, you're not giving them the right information, you don't pay them enough, maybe you pissed them off before, and that becomes its own complication if you're being tracked by security and you've got, criminal element coming after you for whatever reason, or one is selling you out. So you have tracing, and then there's tripping. And tripping is basically tripping an alarm, right? So the trip of an alarm may not be cause for, shutting down a habitat, but it could be like, we traced 3 objects being built and assembled that could become a firearm. Let's call security to have somebody check that out. Let's call an AI or a synth to go walk around and figure out what's going on. And finding those parts and putting them together, like Prue says, is definitely what I want to ask about. Finding parts for guns, for example, it makes sense for low-level criminals only to hold a part of a blueprint, right? And you can, and that's the thing. So if someone has pieces of, let's say, a valuable chemical, weapons, armor, explosives, they could become, in their separate forms, they are not hostile. They don't set off alarms, but you need to assemble them together. Drew Murray says, I think in a post-scarcity world, specificity becomes the new technology. Security systems that a key won't unlock anymore. Getting the right key or tool is still an adventure in a sci-fi. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, man. And you can use that and twist that around, right? So maybe you can print off armor, but you need to get the proper plates to put in it, right? The minute you assemble those plates or have them printed in a machine, the alarms go off, right? So, or you may have a contact that already has those objects. Maybe they were expensively sent across the world, not printed out, but they were actually shipped in the mundane fashion in a box with a postage attached to it. And hey, there's only 30 pieces for guns. You're trying to buy the last 2 pieces, and your contact is like, it's going to cost you, buddy, and it's going to cost you information. It's going to cost you a favor. Those kind of things. So okay, so we've got tracing, which is just tracing, a computer system tracing what's being assembled. You've got tripping an alarm, which is going to send investigators as to what is going on in the system, and then you have tracking and trapping. Now, tracking literally means like you printed something out and the system, you may not know, but they could actually imprint nanofibers into objects so that they can be traced by security. No problem. Yeah, dude. Absolutely do that. You know what? I listen to saying I'm doing some cleaning, but having you in the background so you can listen. And I do that too with a lot of like live plays and things like that. So yeah, don't even apologize for that. So anyway, for this in terms of being tracked, it is possible that in a very high security place, civilization, in locations in habitats, because life is very precious in a habitat where you're only separated by relatively thin pieces of material. For everyone, they want to know that you're walking around with very, very dangerous objects, firearms and things like that. And if you're wearing heavy armor, that means you're expecting trouble, which means you probably want to cause trouble. So they may imprint nanofibers into the machines, and so that security can track where they're at or how they're being used. And this might be a normal process, right? Because Prue says, don't you just hate when the previous gun owner accepted cookies? And you know what? That's the thing. Black market guns might have tracking cookies in them. Who says that the local mob or triad or what have you, criminal organization, doesn't have tracking cookies in their own guns? They want to know who's got their guns, how they're being used. And maybe even this is kind of strange. Maybe they even have like a black box kind of thing, so they can see how their weapons are used, and that could actually be a selling point. Like the black market says, hey, listen, it's like buying on Amazon. Like, look, check out these 30 other previous owners and how they used it. They rated it 4.75 stars, man. These guns are great. Look how they blow away security, man. It blew a hole in the chest of this guy. Take a look at the video. So the thing is that also using these black market items, assembling your equipment, all those kind of things, as a game master, now you've got the tool of creating tension, right? They have a mission to accomplish. Maybe they have hours, days or so. They've got to track down their target. They've got to find an individual. They've got to stay away from security. Every time security passes them, or they pass through a door, or they have synthetic robot security with 6 foot wide shoulders walking around and hateful expressions, looking at them and scanning them every time they walk around. It might be kind of cool. This also means you could actually use this to modify the spotlight on some characters. So maybe this particular adventure, this particular mission doesn't require heavy weapons. Maybe you need to use polymer guns and drugs, and you need to be quiet because walking around with heavy firearms isn't going to be a good thing. Maybe you need flechette guns, needle guns, gas grenades, cloaking devices, those kind of things, and stay away from, high levels of security. Also in habitats, consider the fact that some weapons will be useful in a habitat that cannot create hazards for everybody else. So like anything that causes a flame or heavy gases, acids, slug throwers won't be used in habitats, but stun guns, needler guns, gas grenades, those kind of things, flashbangs probably would. RP Gamer says it would make sense for them to know where their weapons are and to know what crimes are being committed in their name, or even if someone is using their weapons to benefit a rival gang. And zip guns, yeah, you know what? Absolutely. And in a high-tech society, criminal organizations probably operate not just as good, but probably better than your over oppressive governments. They want to know what your weapons are doing. They want to know that they want a live feed of you blowing away your target so that they know that their rival is dead, right? Takes me back to the first my first Shadowrun game in the 90s. And you know what? Absolutely. I mean, imagine first-person shooter. They want to know that you're drawing your weapon and blowing away your enemies and things. If you start handing your weapons over to rivals, they immediately know what the hell's going on. So again, your hacker in the group might be needed to hack the feeds in the weapons you just purchased off of the black market that you've just printed in blueprints that you've avoided in security to kill one person to then destroy those weapons. Drew Murray says population adaptation in massive populations is different environments, such as asteroids, generation ships, moons, could mean you need guns that don't explode, some that work in high gravity. You're right. High gravity, spin gravity, weapons that do, I'm thinking like flechette guns where the projectiles can penetrate flesh, but then they turn to powder. They're fragile. Gases could be higher in oxygen, broken recycling systems on a generation ship, and so on. Yes, absolutely. And remember, I'm thinking that messing with like life support systems is probably a capital offense, right? I mean, essentially, it's like setting off a nuclear bomb on the Earth, right? If you've got a habitat with 100,000 people in it, and you start pumping gases into the ventilation system, or in generation ships, or like a habitat, in a dome city on the moon somewhere, they're going to want to shut you down immediately. So you'll want gases that disperse very quickly, that don't have much residue, that or repurposing items that are already tools, right? So a gas could be stolen from security itself, whether there's a police force or something. Maybe they have a stun grenade, so now you need to steal their stun grenades or their stun devices that might shoot like an electrical arc, or needles that the needles penetrate flesh and then knock you out. He said, I never thought of that. Actually, yeah, that kind of a vandalism is going to be a much bigger crime in those situations. Yeah, especially locations. You need to stop being interesting. I should be cleaning. Yeah, dude. Hey, I need to stop doing live videos. I need to get to work. But you can really create some interesting stories just based off of small little 3D printing nanofab machines, right? And as a game master, now you have a tool to I know this is going to sound bad for players, but you have a tool to control all of the heavy weapon usage, right? In Eclipse Phase and in these kind of games where you have cortical stacks and you're beaming from place to place, you can't have weapon hoarding, right? Your weapons, if you're on the moon, your weapons are useless if you need to go to a habitat orbiting Jupiter or someplace like that. When you get there, you're going to need to assemble your equipment for what you need and then go proceed on the adventure. And that in itself can be an adventure. RP Gamer says, maybe you would find groups of hackers that specialize in altering the actual blueprints and disabling the anti-piracy. Dude, of course. Can you imagine how valuable a bunch of hackers, and these hackers don't need to be like global hacking where they're like taking down empires or something. All they are just a group of maybe 3 to 5 individuals all spread around. You've never met them. You've only seen their avatars, and their only job is to say, listen, I can take out the anti-piracy. It'll last for 27 hours. You owe me so-and-so. Go for it. You owe me a favor or something. Prue says, I love the thought of a desperate group that know nothing of these things, getting hold of small weapons that will risk their own lives or not work because of the environment. Well, see, here's another thing. What if you imprint a nanotab where if a weapon enters a particular dwelling, they just don't work, right? If you're a member of the elite, you're a corporate owner, you are a member of the hierarchy of a particular habitat, a world, a domed city, an arcology, you're sure as shit not going to want any weapons around you to work at all, period. Only your bodyguards, and hell, even your bodyguards are going to have cookie cutters that will not allow them to fire towards you. So the minute anything gets printed in a blueprint anywhere in your city, it's going to have a cookie in it that's just going to say, guess what? When you're in this building, it won't work at all. Criminals will want to use that too. You point a weapon that you bought from me and you point it back at my chest. Oh no, it ain't working. Again, you're going to have those hackers. And there's a danger for the hackers too, man, because hackers have links, and those links can be traced back. I mean, this can get become a really complicated web. Drew says, like the nuclear bunker in Metal Gear Solid, we've turned your nano machines off. No guns. Absolutely. So you have time limits. Maybe here's another thing. Okay, follow me on this. You set up another gang to have weapons blueprinted or purchased in the black market. You get the other gang set up so that it shuts everything down. Security comes running with their own weapons to go after the perpetrators. You take out security, who now has brought out their weapons, and you take security's weapons to finish your mission. I don't know if you followed that, but even that could be cool. Like, all right, we're going to set off the alarm so security gets their weapons and armor, and then we're going to take out security while they go after these other bad guys, and we're going to steal their stuff. But yeah, you can go with so many things. Okay, so let me move on a little bit as to how do the nanofabs work and how are they linked together? Because you can play with that fact too. For example, something's got to go into the nanofab machine for it to make something. So most likely, people that are going to leave Earth are going to be very conscious of recycling things. So recycling machines are going to be everywhere, where you print something off, you print a tool, hammers, bolts, clothing, and you just dump them into a central location, which is going to recycle everything, break it down into its components to be used over and over again into other objects, especially your base things like carbons and your metals and whatnot. Compounds are going to be broken down into its smallest forms and then recycled for another object. Well, recyclers may keep track of what you dump. So weapons might be tracked and traced. Blood might be tracked off of a polymer knife. A gun with a nanovirus in it or something might be tracked. Hypermedications that increase your reflexes that you had printed out. You printed out 10 tabs, you use 3 of them. You need to get rid of them because you know that if you try to get off planet, when you go through security, they're going to find it. So you're going to have to dump it, and it's going to go into the recycler. The recyclers might track that too, right? Who dumped 3 guns and 5 explosives into the recycler? Also, okay, this is a movie trope, but it still works. Your ventilation shafts, right? Maybe a habitat has 500 nanofab machines, and they're all linked by micro dust being blown through a ventilation shaft, and the micro dust, it just looks like gray particles that are being blown around. Those particles then are sucked into machines and being used as the base elements to create other objects. And so your players might be able to hide in the ventilation shafts or something. That's kind of, it's kind of chintzy, but whatever, what have you. It's a trope. It works. I don't know. Those things are kind of funny, but you can use those too. So, in short, nanofabbing things in the far future, in transhumanity, geez, my brain is stopping. It is of itself an adventure in itself. It can be used as a method to acquire something that you need. It can be used to modify the adventure. So maybe like you want your players to be more stealthy. You can use the adventure to get high-powered weapons, whatever, what have you. Drew says, that's my next sci-fi hook sorted. Knife found with blood, and both the knife design and blood can't be traced on government records, so they need to track both the knife maker and the victim. And absolutely, I mean, remember, while the player characters are going to, I know players don't want to hear this, but for every great idea a player comes up with, it's already been done 100 times by other people in a sci-fi world. They're going to know, right? Right. I don't mind tropes. I'm all over them. Prue says, I'm over trashing them. Of course, dude, use and abuse them. Absolutely. Especially if the players like take a trope and then find out that the enemy's already used that trope. Who says the black market hasn't placed sensors inside the ventilation shafts of blueprinters because they're tracing what other people are blueprinting because they know people are blueprinting things used against their own gang? Of course. And especially using blueprints to find like an investigation, right? So imagine the players are investigators. They download information from blueprint machines to find criminals who've been using blueprint machines to commit crimes. So a murderer printed a knife out, killed a victim, dumped it into a recycler, and now the players are tasked with tracing, okay, they printed the knife here. The person was killed here. The blood sample is in this other location. They dumped the knife in this other location, and of course the victim could still be alive, right? So the victim's dead, but they've already resleeved. They're already in another resleeve, and they want to know who killed them, right? So you can actually question the victim. Say, well, I didn't see who killed me. We're looking at the video of their last days just before they were killed. Someone snuck into my place. The knife had a cookie in it, so I would know that a knife was brought into my personal 30-story dwelling that's in the low gravity section of the moon. What the hell happened? I mean, you can play with these things so much. Also, if blueprinters are all connected on the same network, maybe the player characters have to time all of their printing things happening at the same time, because if they print the handle of a gun and now they need the barrel and now they need the firing pins, they may need to print all these things all at the same time so that the network doesn't notice it. If there are private nanofabs, very rich, very powerful, very influential individuals or organizations will have them, they won't be connected. And so the adventure there could be, we need to print off stealth suits to break into another location that has a private nanofab machine, get our stuff printed on that nanofab machine, maybe destroy it, maybe put in a virus in it to convince it that it printed something else, all those kind of things. And then remember, even if you hire hackers or you have a hacker in your group that's able to change things around, the information that things were changed still exists, and that can come back and bite people in the ass, right? So yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of cool things you can do with just very simple, like Earl Grey hot, right? Now, as far as like creating like explosives or acids or like very complicated things, that's going to have to be up to you as the game master. You know, can you go to one location and say, I want to print out like all my armor, my weapons, my drugs, my slap patches for my nano drugs that I injected myself, so I have like nano machines or something. I mean, can you do all that in one location because you need to hand wave it because you got to move the action? Sure. You might want to be careful with doing something like that, just because you don't want to you don't want to make it possible one time and then not possible another time. You can always use the excuse that it's firewall if you're using the Eclipse Phase base organization and say, well, firewall is able to unlock this blah blah blah, and you're able to get all your items and things like that. Yeah, you can use that as an excuse, but I would be careful about having things created so much. You can also add in the limit of time, right? So the more complicated the item you want, the longer it's going to take you. So if you want a screwdriver, that might be, I don't know, 10 minutes. If you want a birthday cake with candles that are lit, it might be 5 hours, right? So based on what is dumped into the system. Now, you could also populate the system with a virus of its own. So what if a particular compound or chemical or even another nanotech material is dumped into blueprinting units that actively attacks blueprinting units? So guns could be printed, but they're brittle. The nano tags that are placed in the machines could be altered. Those kind of things. So you could even play with that. So yeah, is it a deep dive with DBJ? Yeah, I'm deep diving on this one. And could the players even have their own nanofab on, like, say, maybe they have their own starship and they have their own nanofab, but what they need is the raw materials to create certain things? That's a good thing too. So if they have their own starship, they come into dry dock, they dock in, they plug in I don't know what they're called. Maybe it's a hose or something like that. They plug the hose in to print off their whatever they need for their current mission, and then they go about their way. You as the game master could do that as a limiting factor too. Okay, you plug it into the machine. You've docked in the hab. The players need to get their heavy weapons. Guys, it's going to set off alarms. You're not going to be able to print off your heavy assault rifles. You can print off 5 small firearms or 2 large heavy assault weapons. You decide what you're going to make. You can print off 3 bulletproof vests with ablative plating and Kevlar shields. You're not going to be able to print off your infantry combat armor for 5 individuals. It's just not going to happen. You're going to drain the system too much, and they're going to be alerted. You're like, okay. Prue says, then we have a group that feels like they had an easy time collecting a huge amount of blueprints only to find out they have to prioritize between them in a time crunch. Right, absolutely. It's almost like, I'll go back to Dungeons and Dragons. It's almost like, why did my brain just blank? It's when you can only have so many magic items, right? Attunement, right? So you have 30 blueprints for a ton of items, but you can only, quote unquote, attune to like 3 or 4 of them, or the system's really going to go off. RP Gamer says, if a crime organization is selling blueprints, maybe they have them created so the blueprint tells the printer it's something different to what it's printing, so it doesn't raise an alarm. And that adds value to it, right? So your players could have a ton of blueprints. They've got a time crunch. They can only get like maybe 3 or 4 things printed off. They know that the items they need to print have maybe a glitch in them. Not a glitch in the item. It sends a glitch into the system when it's printed. So the blueprint itself could say, hey, it's printing a gun, but it just says it's printing bolts and plates for fixing the habitat skin or something like that. all of those things could be added, and it could be an adventure, a mission of in and of itself, like magic items in fantasy. Hey, I want to get a blueprint that tricks the system that is printing something mundane, right? I want to get a flechette gun that's, automatic, but I want it to convince the system that it's not detecting that it's printing a system. And yeah, players can earn that in their gaming system. Prue says, yeah, and the players will have already started planning with all the prints. That's a nice throw off, right? Because could you imagine them all doing that heist thing, right? They're all sitting around the table like, all right, guys, I got a blueprint for my arc lighter gun, my depleted uranium assault rifle, my X-ray laser rifle, my microwave, razor blade or something like that. They've got all these things set up. They get to the printer and it's like, shit. You mean the minute I print one of these things, it's going to set off an alarm, or it's going to take me 12 days to print this stuff out? I can't wait for that, and all right. Drew says, did you print a gun? No, I printed a porch cleaner. Sir, that's clearly a gun. And my porch is clearing here. Click, 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 click. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. See, you can play with so many things. And okay, how about printing things that look common, but they're really dangerous, right? So the players have now walk around with objects that don't look normal and don't set off alarms, but then they have to piece them together wherever they get to. So, a silencer on a gun is part of a cane, and the handle on a gun is part of like jewelry. The firing pin is an earpiece or a part of something. It could be all kinds of things. Yes, I have one player especially who would love and hate this so much as a huge tactician, right? Exactly. So you can really play with the idea that you can assemble and disassemble weapons and carry them on your person, right? But here's the tension getter. Do you walk into a dangerous situation with your weapon unassembled, then take the time to assemble it at the moment you're being fired at? Remember, there's also the term surveillance, where it's surveillance everywhere. And the surveillance may not pick up that you have a weapon until the weapon is assembled and video monitors can actually see that this person has a weapon in their hand. So you could walk into, do the James Bond thing. Everyone's dressed up. They go to a dinner. They're walking down the corridor of a hotel, and they're dressed as they're dressed as the orderlies, and they have a food tray. They pick up the food tray. There's a gun on it, and they pick up the gun and fire it in the person's chest or something. Maybe. Okay, let's see if you can time this one out. The players use blueprinters to start printing their weapons off. They already put a glitch in the system, so the system is not alerting authorities. They get into a gunfight, and as they run away from the gunfight, they go past printers so they can actually pull the weapon out of the printer and then use that weapon in the gunfight without having to carry it on their back. That sounds really complicated, but I can imagine some players would really want to do that. Like, yeah, I'm going to have the printer start printing my gun now, so when I get there, the gun's done. Or when I leave, because I'm going to have them chase me, we're going to trace them down, a funnel of death, get them down a narrow alley, or get them into the outer skin of the habitat or something like that. And then we're going to pull the guns out of the nano printer because, hey, we can have the nano printer alert me very easily, alert my muse. My muse contacts me, says my assault carbine, microwave laser assault carbine's ready, pull my gun out and start shooting, those kind of things. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun with this. A lot of fun with players being the investigators, tracking their enemy. Remember, all the things we talked about, the enemy's going to use the same techniques. So maybe the hackers that you hired to hide your weapons are also the same hackers working for the enemy. All those things. So thanks for joining in, guys. Thanks, Drew. Thanks, Prue. Thanks, RP. RP Gamer. Check out RP Gamer and his channel for his ramblings. Absolutely. Very insightful things. I love the fact he lives near a bird sanctuary. Very peaceful. Very nice. Prue says, and we all know how well printers work in a crunch, by the way, but anyone who's ever had a deadline knows of printer personality. What is it with printers and glitches, dude? Like, you can print, you could stand in front of a printer and 500 pages of perfectly aligned, perfectly set up pieces of paper on simple black and white. You sit there and boom, 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 no problem. You turn your back and everything will just, it'll jam, it'll misalign, it'll start dumping things. It'll just decide to print random pages. I've got a printer sitting above my head and I've walked away and just come back like, what the hell? So I can't imagine printing out something as dangerous as like, as a chemical compound you're going to inject into your body. You know what I mean? Oh man. Drew says, I dread printers with AI in the future. The amount, I swear, mine. Yeah. And oh my God. Yeah. I wonder if 3D printers are the same. I can't imagine that they wouldn't be absolutely similar. I mean, they'll probably talk to each other and pass on that trait, you know, because how they breed. Fan 7 says 3D is worse. Yeah, if you don't watch it. So, you know, if you're going to use this in the game, man, are your players going to sit there and watch and go, my favorite weapon's getting printed. I better make sure it prints out correctly for 12 hours. You know what I mean? That's, imagine pulling this heavy weapon. It took 12 hours to print it. You pull the weapon out, you start, you know, running down a corridor, you get ready to fire and click. Ampersand says, that's a macro mechanical printer. Trying to program 1 trillion individual molecules to do it is dubious at best. Of course, one black market blueprint that has one glitch in it. Could you imagine making copies of blueprints, printing trillions times 1 trillion layers upon layers or something, and they get it wrong? Oh man. Yeah, 3D printers are full of opportunities to go wrong. Okay. All right. Let's get this right. So imagine, if you will, you get your players, they're like, they have their whole system set up, right? So they're like, listen, we're going to print these weapons, we're going to print this armor, we're going to print these nano drugs, we're going to print all these fibers, we're going to we're going to print like masks to cover our faces, like in Mission Impossible. We've got this whole thing set up. We're going to have like cloaks so we're invisible. We're going to print everything off. And then the game master, you go, okay, there's a chance that your black market items might have a glitch in them. We're going to have you roll, but we're not going to expose the roll, right? So you roll, but we're going to hide the roll for all these items. And you don't know what happens when you pick that item up. All you know is it looks good. It seems like it's fine. You have no idea. Drew says, God, look at modding communities nowadays. Future blueprints will be messed up. And Ampersand says, I'd expect actual blueprints to be relatively simple, though. You can draw up, say, you know, an AK or a face mask, and vector graphics limit opportunities for data corruption to cause real problems. Prue says, quote, this gun takes 6 hours to print. We need it in 6 hours. Printer jam. Yeah. So, okay, here's another option, right? Yes, you can print a gun all at one time, right? And it takes an hour. But you really need the gun to work. So I need to get it printed in 12 pieces in 6 different locations, because I know the printers in those locations are higher quality and I need it to work well. So I'm willing to take the time to go to 6 different locations to get my gun. Yeah, it's a much bigger problem for something like, say, a morph or a computer. And could you imagine? I mean, people could use those glitches, right? Like I was mentioning before about using the glitches. You can put tracking cookies in everything, and those glitches itself could be traced, right? So each blueprint and or printing machine could have a glitch that traces it back to that location. So the blueprint itself could be traced to whoever you purchased it from, and the investigators could follow that. And then the blueprinting machine, investigators could say, oh, I know which blueprinting machine, that's 47A, because everything printed out of that machine smells a certain way, breaks apart at a certain time, sends off a certain signal to our computer systems. Yeah, the effects of a misaligned layer in ammunition sounds kind of horrifying. Oh my God. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, pretty explosive. So, yeah, working with a new printer guy would be kind of terrifying. Yeah, yeah, butt crack is not your the least of your problems, right? It's getting that printer. I'm sure aligning printers is in and of itself probably a very lucrative business, because if you don't get it right, if you're like a guy who's like, if you're the printer guy, they need you working on it. You're just as important as that life support guy. Like if you're that guy that scrubs life support systems, as much as they, they may not want to shake your hand, they need you working on that. Those kind of tracking glitches already exist in real world printers to help fight counterfeiting. Dude, exactly. And in the far future, it takes on a bigger role, right? Those glitches, a notorious criminal who doesn't show his face, all this criminal does is supply blueprints to the black market, in itself could be known for a specific glitch. Even if the items printed work, those glitches might be known. And actually, some people might want that glitch to be seen, right? So every time armor or weapons are printed, it's got this like red devil's face on it. And you can never get rid of the red devil's face. It always shows up on like the shoulder on somebody's jacket, or like on the gun barrel or something, or right, it's got that those double green stripes. Every time you see those double green stripes, running down the street, I know who did it. It's this guy that lives on Neptune, and he's always putting out those, looking to see his stuff used in action and crimes and whatnot. So anyway, I could go on and on. Thanks guys for joining in. I know that I ramble. I know. I probably will be doing shorter live streams, which kind of means that you guys may not be able to join in. So right now, the last post that I see is from FinFan7, where he says those kind of tracking glitches already exist in the real world. So I'm going to cut it off there. Oh, ampersand, seriously. And you get hipsters sticking the green stripes or whatever stuff on whatever stuff intentionally. Yeah, exactly, right? That's my calling card. See how cool I am? So anyway, I'm DBJ. This is Eclipse Phase Friday. I thought I'd talk about printers, talk about cornucopias, nanofabricators, blueprints. Thank you very much for adding to the conversation. This is, of course, going to go up post up on the Facebook group, the Eclipse Phase Facebook group that I'm part of. I hope this gives everybody who eventually sees this a ton of ideas. I hope I gave you some ideas to ruminate on. Came up with so many things I didn't even think of. So thank you very much. Again, I am live at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is kind of strange, but yes, I am. I'm DBJ, your self-appointed third pillarist, part of Critical Hit Publishing. I write 5 ebooks for cinematic environs. So thank you very much. Sorry, I had to plug that. You guys have a very good day. I've got to get off to work. Love you guys. Bye.